The other issue that I think is fundamental is persuading local regulatory agencies to raise the price of water and energy to accommodate the true costs of recycling, which are far greater than just using raw or even filtered water that has come essentially free of charge. We've got a crisis on our hands. I mean, the LA City Council recently, virtually turned down rate increases that were clearly needed by the Department of Water and Power. And we've got a situation that is very comparable to what happened in the 70s. As I said back then, in 1973, in the 70s, prices will increase regardless of any efforts to hold the line. There'll be sharp price rises, but as consumers view it, an increase is whopping. As a consequence, consumers are certainly going to become more concerned. Power boycotts may not appear as widespread as meat boycotts, but the potential of consumer resistance, rage, and perhaps backlash to yearly price increases has been underestimated. We need to look at whether the regulatory process in this country is strong enough, viable enough, and responsive enough to the needs of the industry to hold up on a decade of continuous price increases. Well, that's what we face today. And when you get down at the city council level and the decisions are made, you folks are not there. No one's there. The poor utility is there all by itself. And I'm more angry at the so-called green movement that talk green out of one side of their mouth, but when it comes to paying the price for going green, they're not there. Well, if they're not going to be there, those of us that know that these price increases are needed in order to have an adequate water supply, in order to pay for the investments that we need in more efficient use of water and electricity and the reuse of the water, if we're not there, then city council people just give in to the pressure. There was one council member, I won't mention his name, but he's someone that was a real friend of the Department of Water and Power, who was candid enough to say, I got a whole bunch of emails opposed to this rate increase, so I'm going to vote against it. Well, you know, think of the implication of that. If the issue is whether consumers want to pay a bit more for something that is absolutely essential to them, they're going to vote 99% against the rate increase if they're not informed, and they're not. So there's got to be a combination of educating the public or changing the governance system where people who are not elected but are just sitting on a regulatory commission can make the decision. The private power companies are getting their rate increases because the Public Utility Commission are appointed people that don't have to run for re-election, and their job is solely to look at whether the utility needs the increase or not. But the public water agencies and the public power agencies, and a lot of the water agencies are publicly owned, they have to go before elected public officials to get increases. Now, you can ignore this problem if you want to, but all the yakking in the world and all of the good ideas in the world can't be implemented if the water utilities don't have cash flow sufficient to pay for them. And this is a fundamental issue that faced us in the 70s. We haven't solved it yet. We face it today, and it's more acute than ever because I think that the next 10 years will, of necessity, require tremendous increases in the price of water. And frankly, it's long overdue. But the way things are set up, there's going to be tremendous demagoguing, resistance, and if you were a public official wanting to get reelected and 99% of your constituents were against something, you'd be inclined to vote against it also. So that we need to be thinking of how we can get a different form of government. There need to be something equivalent to the PUC for the public agencies so that the decision maker on rate increases is not an elected body, but an appointed body that deals exclusively with that subject and has a staff that can recognize what's needed. But also we need to invigorate the education process. We need to show up at the public hearings and let and lobby both publicly with the newspapers and with the decision makers, because right now it's not good, folks. I mean, I have seen power agencies downgraded by Wall Street because they haven't gotten the necessary rate increases. And I am concerned that our cheapest answer, our lowest cost answer, which is efficiency and reuse, is going to give way to much more expensive, uncertain, half-baked solutions that may not get the job done. Now, there's another area where there's been serious neglect, and that is the use of water on the farm. Now, there is no excuse for large farming operations not to all have drip irrigation systems and systems that require a lot of piping, but will dramatically cut down on 70% of our water is used on the farms. And those communities lobby real hard to keep the farming community from being under the same kind of conservation requirements as the urban areas. I mean, look at the last water bill that was just passed. There is a serious requirement for urban agencies to be 20% more efficient by 2020 than they are today. That's excellent. But look at the 70% of the water on the farm. They don't have any required to do anything except maybe file some forms or something. And nobody is speaking up in a loud voice pointing that out, because as far as most of the legislators from LA is concerned, water comes out of the tap. That's about all they know about it. And it's not their #1 issue. Whereas from the Imperial Irrigation District and places like that, water is issue 1, 2, and 3, and they see that their interests are covered. But your interest, my interest, the public interest is in using water efficiently in the home and on the farm. And I'm certainly not opposed to water on the farms. We have a big agricultural industry, and most of the uses require water. In fact, a lot of it has been hurt by the shortage of water. There's not a shortage of water. There is a tremendous abundance of waste of water.